Hi everybody, welcome to New York City, the New York Stock Exchange, theCUBE plus NYSE Wired. This is our MedTech Unplugged series, our media week. MedTech is hot right now. Biotech, maybe not so hot right now, but MedTech is booming. It sits at the intersection of a number of secular trends. You got aging populations, you got AI really driving a lot of innovation, you got value-based care and just the growing consumerization of healthcare with individuals taking more control over their health and their futures. David West is here. He's the co-founder and CEO of a company called Procsia. David, welcome. Welcome to our studio here at the NYSE.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be with you.
Yeah,
great space.
Thank you. Well, I always ask co-founders this. Why did you start the company? What was the vision?
You know, this mission is personal for me. My mom is a cancer survivor, and when I got deep into this space of pathology and medicine broadly, it felt so underserved by technology. When you look at pathology today, if you get a medical diagnosis, there's a biopsy that's sent down to a laboratory where a pathologist is going to look at that physical piece of tissue on a physical glass slide under a microscope. And they're looking for the patterns of cancer. And they end up generating some report that gets sent to the oncologist or maybe a gastroenterologist or a dermatologist, says, is there cancer? How bad is it? Maybe what are some potential treatment options? And pathology really hasn't changed in 150 years. It's still based on this Victorian era technology. And we think that pathology deserves great software, it deserves great technology, and should be based on images, and that we can use AI to solve a lot of the efficiency problems that we have in this space and make medical diagnosis more accurate to make sure that the right patients get the right treatment.
So pathology is the study of disease, and it encompasses trying to figure out what is the cause. Like you say, you're examining cells and tissues under a microscope. And the frustrating thing for individuals and their families is it's kind of this serial process. It takes a long time.
Yeah.
How are you changing that? Is it data-based? Obviously AI is involved. Can you explain that?
A lot of the experience that people have on a very personal level, you're right, it takes a long time to get that diagnosis back. A lot of times if you send that case to another pathologist, they might disagree with each other. And I think especially in today's age of medicine, the optimist in me looks at these incredible therapies that we have. In precision medicine, we have literal cures for many patients, which is very different than the way treatments worked, say, 15 years ago, where you had treatments that kind of worked for most patients, like chemotherapy. Now the challenge is that if you want to make sure that those patients get those treatments, which maybe work as cures for 10% of patients, you need to think a lot about diagnostics. And diagnostics become very, very important. They become important for patients. They become important for the pharma companies who are developing those treatments. And that's where AI machine learning can play a really big role. It can play a big role in maybe offloading a lot of the administrative burden that's on pathologists today. We don't have enough pathologists in the world, and they've been tasked with trying to think about more and more treatments to consider and do more, say, reporting work and things that have nothing to do with what they've gone through all their medical training for. But we can also use this technology to identify patients that are candidates for those advanced therapies and let machines do a lot of that work.
Okay, so it's twofold. So you certainly hear that theme in a lot of different, data scientists are doing, 80% of their time is spent wrangling data. Writers, all the time is spent, researching, so AI can, compress that time. And on the one hand, you're saying you're taking away that sort of heavy lifting. In addition, if I hear you correctly, there's a data-based sort of analysis that is providing perhaps better diagnoses and maybe uncovering things that humans haven't seen before or doing so faster.
That's right, and a lot of times, patients are getting on whatever treatment is available to them within the first few days of diagnosis. Timing really matters. And there might be a patient who's a candidate for an advanced therapy or a clinical trial they just never have visibility into. And that's where when you can use AI to look at this data, to look at the image data very deeply, you can do pretty amazing things. And just to put this in perspective, these images are not an iPhone photo. They're like 40,000 iPhone photos stitched together. Something like a gigabyte to some of these images are upwards of 100 plus gigabytes.
Okay.
So incredible amounts of information about that patient's tumor, about their tissue, at a cellular level, at a molecular level, and at a tumor and tissue level. All of that there is in that data. It's in that image. And we think that's really powerful. And most of those, what would be images today, something like 1 billion slides created for diagnostic purposes every year, would be sitting on a shelf on a piece of glass, collecting dust, doing nothing for us. We can use all of that data that's being created to not just make sure the right patients get on the right treatments, but also long-term use that for research to understand disease in deeper ways, understand populations of patients across long periods of time. I think that's where things get really interesting when you reimagine this entire diagnostic discipline as a data and AI-driven discipline rather than as this kind of physical microscope-based discipline.
A lot of these patterns echo. I don't know about your life, but I'm busier than ever with all the really interesting projects that I now have.
Yeah.
Because AI has taken away a lot of that mundane, and I can get to the stuff that's sitting in the glass shelves that I've never had time to get to. You obviously applying that metaphor. Let's talk about the company. When did you start the company?
We started the company in 2016.
Okay, our audience is always interested in how executives started companies. You've got a platform called Concentriq.
That's right.
With a Q.
Yep.
So take us through. So how did you start the company? How did you fund the company?
Yeah.
And then I'm really interested in how you got to product market fit and then ultimately the Concentriq platform.
Yeah, definitely. The company was started out of a kind of humble project my colleagues and I, my co-founders and I were working on. I was at Johns Hopkins at the time and kind of fell in love with this pathology space. I was doing some work in computer vision and machine learning at a time when the techniques that were available were becoming very powerful in 2016 terms, which feels primitive relative to where we are today in 2025. We can talk about that. We can talk about that more. But at the time, it was very clear that machine learning was advances in machine learning and the proliferation in data and the opportunity to take this glass and microscope-based discipline, that this was happening. But when we started the company, originally our vision really was very focused on building those models. It very quickly became clear that we first needed to take pathology from the microscope into this image-based discipline. And that's when Concentriq was born. The original Concentriq was called Pathology Cloud, and it was a very simple product that allowed pathologists and scientists to work with these huge image sets. Basically, some of our investors would describe it almost like Dropbox for pathology. So that was the first thing that we needed to do. And so far, over the now many years, we've been really successful in that. We found our first product market fit in life sciences, where we didn't have regulatory barriers and where these companies were investing very deeply in creating lots of image data to support everything from early stage drug discovery through clinical trials. We're able to find product market fit in that space as this platform and kind of system of record where all of their images would live, where their workflows would be executed, and where they could layer on AI applications across those workflows. That allowed us to raise money. To date, we've raised about $130 million, most recently from Insight Partners, who led a $50 million round a few months ago. And over the years, we've used that capital to break into the diagnostic space, overcome those regulatory barriers, and invest in the go-to-market motion that's needed to get this software not just into large pharma companies, but also into the diagnostic labs and hospital systems that are seeing real patients.
Interesting. Okay, so you got go-to-market fit, and now you're scaling. Product market fit. Now you're scaling go-to-market, and you're entering new markets and widening the aperture. What kind of salespeople do you hire? They must be, medically oriented, technical, folks.
Really smart and sophisticated salespeople that can connect with, these incredible experts, pathologists and scientists that, have spent a lot of their life becoming world class in understanding disease, and they're really they're masters of their craft. And so we bring on people who have have some expertise in that. Our team is, I think, roughly 50% of our team has a PhD, and that's not just in our R&D organization, that's also in our go-to-market organization.
Yeah.
We really look for people that, kind of have that right blend on our go-to-market team of, kind of enterprise selling experience, ideally in healthcare, healthcare and life sciences, and a deep understanding of the technology and the problems that our customers are trying to solve.
You mentioned early on, you avoided getting bogged down in sectors that would be highly regulated.
Yeah.
As you grow, you're obviously getting more involved, presumably the FDA scrutiny, and in Europe, IVDR. What is the regulatory climate? How are you, is it in flux like crypto was?
Yeah.
Is it like that, or what is the state of regulation?
It is, especially in our space. I think what's really interesting is that the microscope predated the FDA by like a century. And so it was grandfathered into that regulation, which actually matters a lot in regulatory world where if you're, you often are developing products based on predicate devices. And so it meant that, companies that were breaking into this space, at first the scanner companies, we don't build any hardware, we just build the software. But we're downstream of companies that are developing these scanners that generate these large images. Those were not cleared for diagnostic use when we first started this company. Those were a niche research technology. And so big companies, kind of household names in medical diagnostics and kind of industrials, were developing these called whole slide imaging scanners and spent tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars getting them cleared through the FDA. And that really took a lot of work with the agency and understanding what this technology is, doing big studies. And that kind of opened the door for software companies like us to go work with the agency, both in the US and in Europe, to get our software products on top of these scanners approved.
So Concentriq is a platform. It's a SaaS-based platform.
Yep.
I pay for it, monthly.
Yep.
I make a commitment for a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, and my price goes down if I commit longer.
More or less.
Typical model.
Most of our customers are signing 5 to 7 year contracts. When they, work with our platform, they stay with us for a long time. And I always tell them I don't need a 5 or 7 year contract because I know when companies start using our products, they fall in love with it. Almost all of them end up using our product twice as much in year 2 as they did in year 1.
So how do you charge? Is it a consumption model?
So we have a little bit of a different business model in life sciences versus diagnostics. We sit across those two segments. In diagnostics, our customers, their business model, laboratories, is essentially, it is a volume-based model. They bill for every case that they read, and that might be anywhere from, say, $80 to thousands of dollars per test or per read that the pathologist is doing. And our pricing model reflects that. And in life sciences,
and they're happy, I'm sure, to share that. Yeah, that de-risks it for them.
That's right.
And it's a win-win.
For these laboratories, they're getting efficiencies, so they're having to spend less time per case. They're able to attract great talent. They might be able to work with pathologists that are on the other side of the country rather than having to, get the pathologist who's closest to them geographically. And ultimately, they're able to expand their margins. These pathology labs are often, barely in the black and sometimes in the red. They're part of a hospital system. And we can come in with our software and help improve their margins, but also generate new revenue streams for them as they're sitting at kind of the nexus of the patient and that therapy. There's ways for them to deliver advanced diagnostic capabilities with AI that they couldn't before. And that's a chance for them to kind of grow their top line and expand their margin.
The ROI is off the chart on that one. So, okay, so that's the pricing model for the lab. Yeah. What about the other sectors?
And for pharma, it's basically it's a team-based pricing model. So kind of typical software-based pricing.
All you can eat.
Yeah.
But with levels.
It scales as they use our software more across their enterprise.
I'm interested in the personas that are using Concentriq and how they're collaborating, what the life was before and after you guys, whether it's computational biologist or a pathologist, or who are these folks and how do they collaborate and how do you add value for them?
Our primary end users are the pathologists, the lab ops folks, and scientists in pharma. And they all work really closely together on our platform. So we're really built for those users. We also work really closely with IT teams and lab leadership and ops leadership that's really thinking about changing their operation from this microscope and glass-based discipline to an AI-based discipline. And so having that leadership buy-in is really important too. But those end users are the pathologists, the scientists, and the laboratory operational staff.
I know our audience will be interested. When you go back to 2016, I'm presuming that the predominance of the AI you were using was deterministic. Was
Yeah.
What they call now traditional ML.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly the hardcore AI labs were aware of and actually working on generative AI.
Yeah.
I'm not sure at what point. I'm interested in what point you became aware of it and how you use deterministic AI versus probabilistic AI, like generative AI, what the value is of each, what the intersection is.
It's interesting. As a company that really started with an AI thesis, and we've always been AI bulls, I don't think I could have predicted what's happened over the last 2 years. Even if I went back, 3 years ago when Transformers were starting to catch on,
right.
I don't think I even personally fully grasped what this would become. It's been absolutely incredible for us and has totally opened the aperture on what's possible with this technology. And you're absolutely right. A lot of the techniques that we had, 8, 10 years ago were these kind of deep learning based, say it's great for classification of tumor, it's great for kind of segmentation tasks. But the things that we're able to do now and the costs at which we're able to do them are on probably 2 orders of magnitude different than what we were doing 8 years ago. We can now start to think about problems like when the pathologist is writing reports. It's probably the least favorite part of their job. A lot of that AI can start to do, and that's what LLMs are really great at. And when we think about building our products, what we try to be is that kind of full stack AI company. So we think about not just the models, but how we orchestrate those models and how we deliver them to the pathologists and the scientists in their workflows, all the way up to the top of that tech stack. Underneath the hood, though, we're using your kind of classic small models. We're using large language models. We're using vision language models or multimodal models that bring together these modalities and vision-specific models. And when a pathologist or a scientist is working with our software, our product under the hood is kind of figuring out which models to use for which kind of tasks. And ultimately, to the pathologist, our goal is for it not to feel like AI, for it just to feel like a faster workflow or feel like autonomy.
So I would imagine the lab workflows are maybe similar. Maybe there's some unique IP for the labs, but I would think the pharma customers have really highly proprietary data that they want to leverage.
That's right.
Is your role to enable that, or are you pretty much just a software platform that provides simplified workflows? How do you or do you address the former?
Yeah, when we talk to pharma C-suite, they all recognize that their proprietary data that might have accumulated over hundreds of years worth of science. These are very old companies in many cases. They have a lot of really valuable IP, and in the age of data and the age of AI, they really have an opportunity to put leverage behind that. And so we think a lot about that. We think a lot about the kind of compliance and security challenges that come with that. That's ultimately, I think, what allows customers or incentivizes customers to work with companies that deeply understand their workflows and deeply understand their data. Our systems are designed to get smarter over time for to kind of learn about our customers' data and our workflows and their workflows, but to do that in a way that doesn't compromise their intellectual property.
I got to ask you, I think it was Ray Kurzweil I first heard say this. Actually, he was probably even more aggressive, and I've been hearing it lately. If we live till 2050, we're going to live forever.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a scary thought.
Yeah.
Now, some of that involves sort of hot swapping our brains, I guess, and our memories. What do you think about that? What do the folks in your industry
Yeah.
and your colleagues think about that?
I've probably become more bullish on that over time, actually. I think it's just incredible to see the advances that in biotechnology over the past, really just few years. And this is the culmination of decades worth of investment in science and technology over the past 30 years that, now we have these new tools in machine learning and AI and a lot of data to accelerate the pace at which we can develop these new therapies and new technologies that can allow us to live better. And maybe it doesn't require a brain transplant. Maybe we start to solve diseases like Alzheimer's, certainly cancer, which is our primary focus and the primary focus of our customers. We think there's a world where getting cancer might be like breaking a bone. I think we're heading towards that.
Amazing. That's an exciting future. And David, I've been thinking, previous waves, they just sort of happened, I want to say slowly. It wasn't like a step function, but all of a sudden you woke up one day and said, wow, my life has changed because of mobile and social media and maybe to a lesser extent the cloud. Do you think this is like this similar? Like we wake up one day and say, wow, the last 10 years, look what we occurred. Or do you think it would be a step function because of things like super intelligence?
I mean, it's amazing. I think back just to a year or so ago, and seeing my family use ChatGPT for the first time and do something silly like write a poem about Santa, and it felt amazing. It felt like magic. And now it's only been a year and that magic has kind of worn off.
Trivial,
I don't know what that means, but maybe that's just the nature of technology is we build something that is akin to magic, and yet it feels so trivial after just a short time of using it, and we take that for granted. I certainly think that the pace of change is nonlinear, it's accelerating, it is extremely steep right now. And most of the world has really not seen what's possible. Most of the world, I think, is still kind of operating in this, write a nice poem on ChatGPT. And the best part of my job is, I get to work with amazing scientists and technologists that are really close to this. And as, markets kind of evolve, they start with technology and then they become products and then they change behaviors. And we're probably somewhere between the technology and products. Like most of this technology has yet to be productized. We spend a lot of energy, not just trying to understand that technology and build that technology, but turn them into real products that customers can use and then get them to market. And I think we're going through that with this next generation capabilities in AI right now. And over the next, 24 to 36 months, it's going to look, the world is going to look very different. I don't know how humans are going to react to that. I'm not an expert in, sociology or economics in that way. But I can say pretty definitively that this is extremely powerful technology. It's probably more important than the internet, and it's not slowing down.
How about agents in your world?
Yeah.
And what's the sentiment around, Mark Benioff says we're the last generation of managers to be managing human-only workforce. Yeah. It's going to be an agent and human workforce. What's the sentiment in your industry around that?
Yeah, agents I think are ways to use the capabilities of large language models and other models to do things in autonomous ways for us. I think much of many workflows in healthcare, including in pathology, will be agentic. I think we can use agents to do many of the things in the laboratory or in the diagnostic workflow or kind of care continuum that humans have to do today and maybe hate doing. If you talk to doctors today, they're feeling burnt out. We don't have enough of them. They're looking at, leaving medicine entirely. And if you ask them why, most of them would tell you, well, it's because I'm just burdened with, whatever it is, reporting, working in my EHR, or in the lab case, my lab information system. That's work that, humans really don't like doing. And I think laboratory leaders and pathologists in my industry are thinking about how do I offload that to agents or agentic kind of systems. It's also letting us do things that we couldn't have done before just because it's lowering the cost barrier. We can start to, introduce agents that ensure laboratory quality at all parts of the workflow, and that's how we're using this technology. Today, every case that's coming through our system is screened by AI that is agents, that are agents or agentic-like, for kind of quality artifacts and ensuring that we're getting only high quality data to the pathologist.
It's interesting, your point about adoption. I heard a stat the other day, ChatGPT is still the most downloaded app, I think in the iPhone store, Apple store. And the number 1 state was, in terms of its growth, was like Nebraska.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
Nebraska's coming on board.
Yeah.
My point being, the S-curve of innovation now with AI is attacking those mundane tasks.
That's right.
Once we start to flatten that S-curve, it's going to be amazing to see what we attack next.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've thought much about that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that working in medical diagnostics, it's an area that people think about a lot when they think about AI and automation, because it is it's kind of at the height of knowledge work. You want doctors here who are highly trained, who you're going to trust. I think having worked in this space for a while, I mean, people always ask me, we're just going to automate all of medical diagnostics. I think we will very much still have pathologists for quite some time, and diagnosticians and doctors broadly, for the foreseeable future. But their roles will likely look very different. That they might be orchestrating something that looks like agents, or maybe they're ordering AI-based diagnostic tests, and they're more like maybe Tom Cruise in Minority Report, as one of pathologist customers told me. That's what he wants to be. I want to be Tom Cruise in Minority Report. I just want to kind of look at the screen and move through images and order tests. And I think that's what the future of medicine, might look like. But certainly these technologies are becoming extremely powerful. It's hard to predict what that means, but humans tend to be really good at adapting to these technology changes, and I think in healthcare we really need this, because it's extremely inefficient. We spend way too much money on it, and often not having the kind of healthcare impact that we want and need.
It's a very exciting future, and one that I think everybody can relate to. So David, thanks so much for coming on theCUBE.
Yeah,
and
thank you for
NYSE
having
Wire.
me.
I really appreciate it. You're welcome. Okay, you're watching theCUBE and NYSE Wire. It's MedTech Series. This is Dave Vellante. John Furrier is here as well. Keep it right there, back right after this short break.